Hey guys, my name is Loveless, and we are back with Quirk Knife. I'm not too sure if I said this the last episode, but I bought a thing to help me with my voice acting. Or, reading out loud in general. So maybe that could work. Also, I was getting some inspiration from actual narrators. So I might have cracked the code in how I'm supposed to actually do it instead of feeling like I'm rushing or sounding like I'm rushing. Because most of the time I am. Because also, like, just my brain goes so fast. And I think that some people get annoyed if I was going too slow, but then also I shouldn't do that because there is a speed up button. You can make it go faster or go slower. So yeah, so I'm just gonna try a few new things, see if it works. If it doesn't, try again. Okay, so now we are at chapter 28. So, Shota hums as the three kids all turned at once, seated on the edge of the building with their legs swinging back and forward idly. So, Izuku repeated, most likely with a smirk hidden underneath his mask. How's your new class, Shota thinned his eyes and removed his goggles, letting them hang loosely around his neck. You know something, don't you? What would make you say that, my dear friend? Speaking of friends, Shota jutted his chin out. Did your friend get into UA successfully? Perhaps with, well, a familiar capture weapon you stole from me a few months back? Izuku shrugged. I have no idea what you're going on about. Besides, you can't prove anything. What would I be proving, Chaos? That you're stupid? You little... All right, Dobby interrupted. That's enough of that. As much as I fucking love the banter you two have, I think we should all agree you're both stupid. Toga adjusted her new mask, silver with little pink flower petals, and cleared her throat. You come see us a lot for someone who's supposed to be catching the vigilantes on the loose. What do the police think of that? The other heroes? Shota's eyes glanced at each kid for a brief moment. Barely a second before he looked up to the moon, a slight breeze making him shiver ever so slightly. Well, he hummed. No one has to know, right? Toga winked dramatically and stood up along with Dobby and Izuku, all three sliding down the vertical legs of the fire escape with ease. Shota following them down while using his scarf. He was currently off course for his usual patrol for Sunday night. But these kids always manage to locate some troublemakers. Not that he needed any help, of course, but it was still interesting to watch them in action. It wasn't long until a scream caught all attention. The three vigilantes taking off at a high-speed pace without the slightest of hesitation. Shota following quickly. The scream was agonizing, full of pure fear and horror. It was enough to send chills down Shota's spine. What the fuck is going on? Dobby panted as they rounded onto the main road, the streetlights flickering as no bystanders were to be seen, not even a victim. But the shriek was still present, muffled but just as scared. Just ahead, a large figure slammed the trunk of a black car down and turned, freezing for a second as his eyes landed on the four people watching him, very visibly armed. Abduction! Izuku breathed softly, Toga and Dobby giving a barely noticeable nod in return. No sudden movements, he said. Shota's eyes flickered down to where the boy was fingering something on the side of his utility belt around his right thigh, hands steady as always. As the figure seemed to realize the pressure now involved in the situation, he took off and dove into the driver's seat, The tail lights ignite as the engine roared to life. "Move!" Izuku shouted as Toga and Dabi sprinted forward. Yet it was obvious they wouldn't catch the car in time. That's why Shota, confused as to why Toga veered left and Dabi right, taking a wide angle towards the car. What were they doing? "Tsukachi," Shota spoke into his earpiece once the detective finally picked up the phone. "I'm pursuing an active abduction. The vehicle is black and the victim seems to be female, although I didn't get my eyes on them. The figure in question is most likely male due to the build, but I can't be positive. I'll send my location, and I'm currently with vigilantes Morphine, Blaze, and Chaos." With a final sputter, the car drove forward, swaying slightly as the tires couldn't get proper traction against the asphalt. It was almost like the road was wet, yet the entire day it's been sunny, and the rest of their surroundings were completely dry. What could be? A flash of blue light caught Shota's eyes, just flickering from around the corner of the building, like tiny little sparks of lightning. Dabi's hands were placed on the asphalt, but instead of blue flames swallowing his hands, it was dark smoke. The smell of burning rubber assaulted Shota's nose. Was he melting the ground? Could his quirk even do that? Sure enough, the air became thicker and hot, so hot that Shota's clothes began to stick to his skin and his eyes felt even drier than normal. The wheels of the getaway car sunk and slowed down, giving Izuku enough of a chance to sprint forward. This knife better be as sharp as I was trying to make it. As Shota watched the thin knife fly through the air at top speed, he thought maybe that Izuku had lost it, and he just wasted a chance to do something with a stupid move. As he opened his mouth to shout curses in anger and frustration, something audible popped and the car shifted to the left, the entire vehicle tipping to the right. The sound of spilling air overpowered that of the engine. It was back on the right tire with a large slash deflating it quickly. "Morphine!" Izuku shouted as Toga ran out of her spot, the presumed man trying to escape from the car while shouting into his phone. Izuku and Shota made it for the trunk as a black-purple hole seemed to open up out of nowhere, the villain making a dive for it. At the same time, Toga threw 4 knives at random in hope in getting the man, but they went past and he disappeared into the mist, gone without a trace. Toga swore loudly as she ran for her knives and dropped to her knees, carefully inspecting them with her gloves. As Shota worked the trunk open, a young boy with wide eyes looking up, overflowing with tears and panic, arms tied back and some sort of fabric shoved into his mouth. Izuku removed it, immediately cutting the restraints, helping him out and allowing him to sit safely on the curb as Shota comforted him with soft words, updating Tsukachi. From the corner of his eye, he watched the 3 vigilantes all crouched in the same area, whispering amongst themselves, until they heard the sirens approaching. With widened eyes, the 3 scurried off as Tsukachi and the team rounded the corner, disappearing into the night where they could no longer be caught. Good. Shota helped the victim be seated at the edge of the ambulance as someone checked in on him, Tsukachi giving him a moment before questioning. "And what about the vigilantes?" he asked. "You said Chaos, Blaze, and Morphine were here." "I'm now positive that they're a team. It's too unlikely for them to always be spotted together, but never apart." Shota just shrugged. Ran off. Don't know what to tell you. He was aware the detective had a fair sense of ideas on who the vigilantes were, specifically Chaos, but was also secretly hoping he wouldn't have to act. Tossing an orphan kid into jail while ripping him apart from the only friends he made? Safe to say that would do more harm than good, especially if he somehow ended up getting away. Shota didn't even want to think about where Izuku would end up. "He's quirkless." The nurse came over, said that what the man asked him to. the first and only question he asked. Tsukachi wrote that information down on his notepad. Some sort of quirk discrimination action? Trying to get rid of something he doesn't like? Shota hummed. And the mist. That wasn't his quirk because I turned his quirk factor off, meaning someone else helped him escape. And if we're throwing out ideas, wouldn't the man just kill his target instead of trying to take them away? Maybe to hide the body? Tsukachi tapped his chin. My concern is that he escaped, meaning there's a large chance he'll try again. He turned to the victim and smiled kindly. Hello. Is there anything else you can tell me? Perhaps anything else, he said. The young adult shook his head. No. He just asked me if I was quirkless, and I said yes. Then it all happened so fast. Stupid move on my part, now that I think about it. Did you notice any sort of quirk? No, but he had a gun. Shota's phone vibrated in his pocket, and he looked down, unlocking the device and clicking the messaging app. Chaotic mess. This is the man that attempted the kidnapping. We already left a blood sample at the police station. Morphine was able to grab some. The knife was properly bagged and is on Tsukachi's desk. Shota opened the photo. A man standing just in a random alleyway. Their appearance was extraordinarily basic. Brown eyes and black hair with fair skin. Nothing that would allow him to stick out from a crowd. Sleepy. Where did you get this? Chaotic mess. I can't text you. You could show it to anyone. This isn't the actual man, though, so I can't have you arresting him or anything. Sorry. In addition, he's about 5'11". Don't know if that helps at all. Sleepy. It does. Thank you. Now go home and sleep. Chaotic mess. Yes, sir. Despite Tsukachi's confusion, he accepted the pictures gratefully and went off to analyze it, leaving Shota alone to finish off his uneventful patrol route. Crawling back through the apartment of his window, forcing himself to have a shower because he smelled like smoke and rubber, then collapsed on his bed next to his husband. Although his mind refused to silence itself, Shota let his eyes close and absorb some warmth from Hitoshi, not ready to repeat everything the next day. Hey, hey! May beamed as she sat down next to Hitoshi in the cafeteria for lunch. He turned to greet her, but froze mid-sentence. What the fuck are you covered in? She shrugged. Some oil, probably. Sut? I made something explode again, but it's progress. Kaminari tilted his head like a puppy. Explosions mean progress? Yes, because now I know what I did wrong and I won't do it again, bringing me one step closer to success. Hitoshi snorted as Kaminari began talking about the time he lit his kitchen on fire as he felt eyes on him, whipping around to see Todoroki, staring once more, mouthful of soba noodles, and sitting alone. What are you looking at? May hit the top of his head playfully and turned around, looking at Todoroki with a curious expression. That's the guy you had a little beef with, right? Hitoshi rolled his eyes. Don't call it beef. Well, he's sitting all by himself. Maybe he's just jealous you made friends. May! The pink-haired girl stood up confidently before Hitoshi could grab her, regretting that he left his scarf in homeroom for the first time. May marched right up to Todoroki and slammed her hands on either side of his soba, leaning down to come nose to nose with him. Hi, I'm May. Todoroki leaned back slightly with a pinched expression, only causing May to close the distance once again, not even realizing how intimidating she was being. Do you want to come sit with my friends and I? The boy's eyes thinned, and all he did was look back at his soba, slurping loudly in May's face. She paused, then followed by a gasp. Oh, are you mute? Hitoshi knows sign language, if that's the problem. I'm not mute. I just have no interest in making friends. May was thrown off balance for a moment, but not because of his words. That tone, the lack of emotion in his voice, it was unsettling. Then why are you staring at us? None of your business. You know, May hit the table again, drawing attention from other nearby students. I tried to give you a benefit of a doubt, but now let me make one thing clear. Staring is rude, and I'll poke both of your eyes out if it continues. Todoroki's eyebrows raised slightly in surprise, and his eyes cast down to his soba. Still not saying anything, something grabbed the back of her shirt. Cyril chuckled nervously as he waved awkwardly at him and pulled May away, forcing her back into her seat, where she huffed. He's not very nice. Ashido tilted her head. Maybe he's just shy or something. No. I said he can come sit here, and he said he had no interest in making friends. Like I'm scum or something. I'm sure he didn't mean it in that way, Sarah reassured. Let's not jump to conclusions. He might still be adjusting, like Kaminari. Hitoshi frowned. What? The blonde pulled lightly at a strand of electric hair and shrugged. I was homeschooled for 2 years before this, so I was a little nervous to be thrown back in it. Luckily, I am a social person, but it might be nerve-wracking for him. Same. Kaminari looked up at Hitoshi. Huh? Yeah, I was homeschooled for 3 years previous to this. Didn't think I would actually make friends. I was already your friend, May beamed, and Hitoshi rolled his eyes. I know that, May. Ishido smiled. How did you two meet, anyways? Just a coincidence? He broke into my We ran into each other at one of our favorite cafes and had a mutual friend. The two spoke over one another, Hitoshi's voice getting louder to cut May off as he laughed nervously. A cafe? Ishido asked. This cat cafe. The purple-haired boy continued, waving his hands mindlessly. It's just a few blocks from the train station, actually. Kaminari shook his head. Wait, can we go back? The blonde was cut off by Hitoshi's phone ringing, and May looked over curiously as Mever's eyes widened. Pardon me, I'll be right back. Hitoshi was stressed. May had never been good at social cues, but it's like she'd grown attuned to Hitoshi, Izuku, Dabi, and even Toga's emotions, and Hitoshi was currently beyond stressed. May's leg began bouncing up and down as she watched him leave the cafeteria, with his phone pressed to his ear, not noticing as she began knocking her wrists together to relieve the stress that was rolling onto her. What's up? Cyril said gently. He'll be back, I'm sure. May hummed. He just really got stressed then. I don't like it. Hitoshi feels like the oxygen's been sucked right out of the air, leaving him to suffocate. His vision was hazy as he walked down the hall numbly, tumbling into the classroom and turning to brace himself against the wall quickly, leaning his forehead in the crook of his elbow before collapsing to his knees, burying his hands into his hair. Oh God, he sobbed under his breath. His body trembled violently, and his phone slipped from his hand, sliding onto the ground. Concerned messages from May blowing his screen up already. Hitoshi choked on his own breath as a hand placed itself on his shoulder, causing him to whip around and slam the arm away, back into the wall further. Shinso! Aizawa crouched down. Are you injured? At any other moment, Hitoshi would have been red up to his ears in embarrassment for having a full breakdown in front of both his homeroom teacher and all-time favorite pro hero. But this was not any other moment, and Hitoshi was busy trying to fucking breathe. Aizawa's eyes pinched together as he looked over his student, unsure on where to begin. Shinso, I need you to tell me if you're injured or not. Hitoshi heard the command distantly, so he was able to shake his head in a jerky motion, painting like he had just ran 12 miles. Aizawa sighed and took Hitoshi's hand, placing it over his heart under his scarf, and began exaggerating his breathing. Copy me, he instructed, and Hitoshi found himself doing just that, despite hearing the door slam open multiple times, where Aizawa would mumble something and the door would shut again. Shota's breathing regulated, but the tears refused to stop, spilling onto his gray blazer in thick droplets. He inhaled sharply and drew his hand back into his lap, fighting the urge to squirm under Aizawa's heavy glare. I have to leave for the day, Hitoshi mumbled, standing up on shaky legs as he made his way to his desk and slipped his capture scarf out of his backpack, wrapping it around his neck where it belongs. Shinso, Aizawa cleared his throat while blocking the door. You still have hero training today. You'll have to wait. Is something wrong? Hitoshi cursed under his breath and wiped more tears. There's something I need to take care of. Please, I'll be back tomorrow. He tried to step around the teacher, only to be blocked again. I swear to God, I will take the window and show myself out. Aizawa cocked an eyebrow, and Hitoshi was getting restless. I have to go. Tell me why, then. Hitoshi didn't want to tell him why, because then it'll make the entire situation real, as if the tears on his face weren't real enough. I have to go to the hospital. Aizawa frowned even further. You said you weren't injured. I'm not. Then why do you have to go to the hospital during school hours? Why do you care? Can't you just wait until after school? No. Why? Because goodbyes don't wait. The black-haired man froze. What does that mean? Hitoshi turned his head to the side, this time swearing loudly in smooth string of words he probably heard from Izuku. I have to say fucking goodbye, alright? Let me fucking go before I don't get there in time. Aizawa chewed on his bottom lip before turning and walking out the door. Only turned once to make sure Hitoshi was following. Mike, he said as they passed the bright teacher, tell Ame to carry out my training plans today. They can go with the third years if he has to teach both. Cover me in 7th period. I know you have a spare. Yamada didn't argue, just nodding with his eyes hovering over Hitoshi, who probably looked like he got hit by a train before giving a wave and continuing. Keep up. Aizawa barked as his scarf grabbed Hitoshi's wrist, pulling him like a dog on a leash. Toshi! May cried, sprinting from around the corner and dodging other passing students. What's wrong? Why are your eyes red? Are you crying? Who hurt you? Should I call our guard dogs? Why Aizawa? May. Why would you think something's wrong? She slammed a foot down. Because, I'm sorry. May, go back to class and forget you saw me. I went home because I caught a cold. If anyone asks, you tell them that. The girl's yellow eyes faded to white as she turned around with a blank expression, making her way down the hall as Hitoshi watched, more tears collecting on her eyelashes. With another hug, Hitoshi followed Aizawa. What are you doing? Coming with you to the hospital, obviously. Hitoshi squeaked and nearly tripped, catching himself with his own capture scarf, Aizawa leading him into the parking lot. Get in, he grunted as he opened the passenger door, shoving Hitoshi in despite his mumbles of protest, taking the driver's seat as the engine roared to life. This feels more like a kidnapping, Hitoshi mumbled as Aizawa ignored him. Put your seatbelt on. I'm not a good driver. True to his words, Hitoshi braced himself against any handlebars he could reach, the horrible driving enough to distract him from his panic. He whispered under his breath, I guess gays really can't drive. Did you say something? No. Hitoshi looked out the window, nearly smacking his nose off the glass as the car swerved once more. Why didn't you just call my parents? He knew his voice was cracking, but he couldn't care at this point. Why didn't you? I was panicking. Aizawa took his eyes off the road to look at Hitoshi, the boy whimpering as he reached over to yank the wheel towards him just in time to avoid a lamppost, then using his scarf to turn Aizawa's face back to the road. I read the files of my students, you know. So, I know you're in the foster care. So, I know you're in foster care living with a single elderly woman. Is that who? Shut up, Hitoshi snapped. You don't know shit. Aizawa ran a red light that had just turned from yellow, even though he could have easily stopped. Hatsumi's in the support course, correct? Confused with the change of subject, Hitoshi nodded, nevertheless. So, how do you two know each other? Oh, Hitoshi wasn't stupid, and neither was Aizawa. It was obvious his lilac capture weapon was suspicious. So why hasn't he said anything about it? What game are you playing? Hitoshi said quietly, flinching as Aizawa rounded a corner far too quickly. What do you mean? He responded, his voice just as careful. No, Hitoshi was too tired for this today. He couldn't do it. Never mind. Aizawa hummed. Tell me about May. And Hitoshi did, keeping his sentences short and simple as he described her messy personality and her skills. She's the one that made my mask. I can copy people's voices, you know. I didn't even know that because the instruction note that she wrote took me 3 fucking pages. I couldn't read it all before class. Kaminari thinking it's hilarious when I copy his voice. Aizawa nodded. You better be keeping Kaminari in check. He's a bit of a mess. That's not very nice. I never said I was nice. Hitoshi held back a laugh because Izuku would have said otherwise. Considering Aizawa's the reason he's not fucking dead, the conversation was so distracting that Hitoshi nearly forgot why he was in the car in the first place until they pulled up to the hospital. The tears already back. Come on, Aizawa said in a gentle tone, unlike his usual voice. The two walked in with Hitoshi, already beginning to shake once more. Hitoshi Sensei, for Yuri Kayabu? His student told the receptionist in one breath, Shota glaring at her with an intimidating expression. She looked at the computer and then nodded. Right, we only have one Shinso for visitation. Your father here isn't registered. This is my teacher, Shinso interrupted quickly, completely glossing over the fact that the woman called him his son. Oh, well, it's fine. Can I go see her now? The receptionist sighed. Fine. Only because I don't want to keep either of you back to fill out any paperwork. She's in room 231, just down the hall to your left. Shinso nodded and Aizawa turned to him. I'll wait out here for you. A hand wrapped around his forearm and pulled him along down the hall to the left as Shinso bursted through the door, hesitating as his eyes landed on the sickly women in bed. Oh, Hitoshi, she croaked with a kind smile. You made it. Of course I did, Kayabu, he whispered, releasing his rough hold on Shota, and walking up to the bed, sitting on the edge with a sad expression. Smile for me, Kayabu said gently. It's what you deserve. Death isn't so bad. But I don't want you to leave. The woman coughed. It's all right. I know it's not easy. But when you become a hero, just know I'm cheering for you. Shinso burst into tears again as Shota stood in the doorway nervously, not wanting to leave in case it upset the boy further. I have a friend that's going to take over the library, and you still have your spot there if you wish. Kayabu held his hand loosely. And please, make sure to feed Bean, all right? Shinso just nodded slowly. I will, I promise. And stay with those little friends of yours, all right? The little green one. Make sure he eats. Shinso stiffened immediately, casting a glance to Shota. It could be left for later. Shota already had his guesses. I will, he repeated again. Kaibu's brown eyes brightened in Shota's direction. And who is this, Hitoshi? The boy sniffled. Oh, this is my teacher, Aizawa-sensei. He drove me here. Oh, she sighed with a sour smile. Thank you, young man. Young? It was nothing, he mumbled as Kaibu waved him closer, Shota feeling like he had to comply as he did. Don't let them take him back, she whispered. They're horrible to him. Just make sure he's going to be okay. Shota could only nod as Shinso whispered more choked phrases. The woman's heart rate slowly dropped as nurses rushed in, forcing Shinso out as he cried and screamed, Shota having to step in and wrap his arms around his torso, pulling him out of the room. Shinso fought in his grasp, twisting and turning every which way, as his voice grew hoarse and his body went limp in exhaustion, sagging in Shota's hold. And that was it. Her body was too weak to be resuscitated. After they received the official news, Shinso stared at Shota for several moments with panicked eyes, then turned around and puked up his lunch into a garbage can as he sobbed further. Don't let them take him back. They're horrible to him there. Shota exhaled softly and looked at Hizashi's number in his contacts, rereading his written text, and decided to bite the bullet. He pressed send. Yeah, I'm done. Woohoo! Okay, I want advice. I want to know if I did good this time because I haven't gotten much comments from anybody. And I'm like, how do I know if I'm improving? Because I'm pretty biased because it's me. So if you have any tips or if I'm like doing it wrong, if I'm still doing it too fast, or you know, what I need to work with, just tell me in the comments. You know what to do. Bye.